Welcome, excuse me, welcome to Family Basics 101. I'm Dr. Bruce McClure, the local minister at the Prince George's Church of Christ, located at 7800 Central Avenue in Landover, Maryland. This week, we're going to spend our time looking at a very simple word on the face of it. But as we delve deeper into the definition, I hope you'll understand that it can be a positive or it can be a negative, and that is the word constrain. It's a biblical term, and all of my references this week will be biblically based because the Bible has some things to say about what constraint means. And why it is important or why it can be detrimental in the lives of God's people. The base definition simply means to compel, to drive, or to insert force. And with that simplistic definition, to compel, to drive, or to insert force, I want you to look at the part of speech that the word derives from. And that is, it's really a verb. It is not a passive request. Even in Matthew chapter 14, verses 21 and 22, about 5,000 men were fed that day, in addition to all the women and children. Immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and cross to the other side of the lake while he sent the people away. Now, we read that and we say, well, he just insisted, no, I think you need to go. No, he's not saying, no, I think you need to go. The text really is saying Jesus made the people get back into the boat. Constrained is an active verb. He didn't just advise them. He didn't say, well, I hope you pray over this. And I hope you think about it. And at the end of your prayer, I hope you see it the way I see it. Jesus made them. He made the people get back into the boat. Had he not made them get back into the boat, the implication is they would have just kept hanging out and hanging out. Not for a bad reason. They were celebrated. About 5,000 men were fed that day, in addition to all the women and all the children. But right after that, Jesus insisted that the disciples get back into the boat and cross to the other side of the lake while he stayed and sent the people home. Let me give you another illustration of constraint. In the book of Acts, chapter 26, and I've got it written in twice, once from the King James and once from the New Living Translation. But this is Paul's illustration of constraining, and it's a negative use. And I punished them often in every synagogue, and I compelled them to blaspheme. And being exceedingly mad against them, I persecuted them, even unto strange cities. See, Paul said, I drove them, I forced them, I threatened them in every synagogue, in every Jewish synagogue. I drove them, I forced them, I threatened them to blaspheme. Well, let's read that out of the New Living Translation. Many times I had them punished in the synagogues to get them to curse Jesus. See how much more enlightening this meaning is? I was so violently opposed to them that I even chased them down in foreign cities. The people were afraid of Saul. And Saul is saying, I know they were, because I made it my business as a Pharisee to intimidate the people. And I wanted them, just by hearing my name, hearing my voice, seeing people who represented me, I wanted them to be afraid. And therefore, he said, many times I had them punished in the synagogue to get them to curse Jesus, to compel them to curse Jesus. They didn't voluntarily curse Jesus. Paul said, I beat them. I threatened them with death. I humiliated them. I was so violently opposed to them that even when they tried to get away and go to other places, I chased them down, constrained. Finally, here's an illustration from Galatians chapter 6, verse number 12, where circumcision was constrained upon the Gentiles. In Galatians 6, verse 12, the text reads, those who are trying to force you to be circumcised want to look good to others. They don't want to be persecuted for teaching that the cross of Christ alone can save. They don't want to be persecuted for teaching that the cross alone will save. So how do they try to avoid it? They are trying to force you to be circumcised. So we've got the cross, but we've got circumcision. We've got baptism into Christ, but we've also got circumcision. They're not trying to constrain people to be baptized, but what the Judaizing teachers were doing is forcing people, intimidating people to be circumcised, making an action necessary, driving others in order to look good to others. The implication is they knew better, but in order to make it look as if they were serious teachers, we're going to make this action as significant and relevant and important as the other action. In Galatians 3, if you recall, verses 26 and 27, Paul had already told the Galatians, we're all the children of God by faith in Christ Jesus. And as many of us has been baptized into Christ, put on Christ. By the time you get to chapter 6, he says, there are people who are teaching beyond baptism. And they're trying to force you, constrain you to be circumcised. They're making this a necessary act. Constrainment. It can be positive or it can be negative. Jesus constrained the disciples to get into a boat and go to the other side, not for negative, punitive purposes, but so that he could have some parting words to the multitudes that he had fed. Paul, on the other hand, said, I constrained people, I forced people to deny the Lord. I threatened to kill them. I humiliated them in a negative sense. On tomorrow, come back to class, and we're going to talk about constrainment, but we're going to talk about how love is supposed to constrain us and how love becomes the regulator for us sometimes to learn to hold our peace, regulate. So on tomorrow, we will look at constrainment as a regulator, not as an intimidator, not in a persecuting way, but how we as God's people are to learn constraint. I'll see you back in class again tomorrow. Don't be late and don't skip class.